So after a long weekend of playing literally nothing but Halo Infinite, I wrote down my thoughts and opinions on what I loved and what I didn't love from the tech preview, and I figured I'd expand on those thoughts and do a little overview video here on the channel of my time with Halo Infinite. So I'm not going to make this intro any longer, let's just get right into the video. So, to start the video, I figured I'd go over some of the positives that I found while playing the Halo Infinite tech preview. The first and probably most important thing I want to talk about is gameplay. The moment-to-moment gameplay is just incredibly engaging in all the right ways. Movement feels satisfying, equipment feels satisfying, combat feels satisfying. Everything that you experience on a moment-to-moment basis in this game just makes you want to keep playing it. And that is incredibly important for a game that is going to be a live service like Halo Infinite is set to be. And up next is Sprint, because I feel like this has been a hotly debated topic amongst the Halo community ever since Sprint's introduction into the series back in Halo Reach. Now, out of all the Halo games that have done Sprint, Halo Reach, Halo 4, Halo 5, and now Halo Infinite, I think that Halo Infinite does it best. Now, I'm going to be totally honest with you guys. I don't really have strong opinions on Sprint and Halo. I didn't mind it in Reach. I didn't mind it in 4. I didn't mind it in 5. I don't hate it, and I don't love it either. I'm kind of neutral on it. But I know a lot of people have very strong opinions on it either way. So it is a big issue. And when I say that I think Infinite does it best, I mean, like, the difference between sprinting and not sprinting in this game is minimal. Like, it almost doesn't make a difference. I remember listening to Chris Raygun's stream during the weekend, and he kind of explained it really well, better than I could. Sprinting is like a tool that you use so that you can slide. It's not something that you use because you need to use it. And in fact, there are actually incentives to not use sprint in this game, because for one, if you sprint on this game, you show up on the radar. Before, in previous Halo games, it was like movement of any sort meant you showed up on the radar unless you were crouch walking. Now, in here, you can crouch walk, you can walk at a normal speed. As long as you're not sprinting, you will not be showing up on that radar. And I gotta be honest, like, I feel like a lot of FPS games nowadays, with the exception of like Doom. I mean, Doom is a good example of an exception. But most games, like FPS games nowadays, they encourage you to sprint. They encourage you to use mobility quite often. I think a really good example is Titanfall. Like, the mobility in Titanfall is just next level. But because so many FPS games kind of encourage you to use that enhanced mobility, it kind of makes you numb to sprinting in FPS games. Where, like, just by default, you go ahead and sprint on an FPS game. Even if, like, you don't really need to. It's just one of those things I found myself doing when I first started playing Infinite. Where, like, I would sprint. To start the match, I would sprint out and grab a weapon. And as I continued to play Infinite, I noticed, like, there were a few games where I told myself, okay, I'm not going to sprint this game. I just want to see what happens. And I would play an entire match without sprinting, and it would be awesome. It would feel great. And I didn't feel like I was missing out on anything by not sprinting. Whereas, like, you know, in Halo 5, Halo 4, and maybe Halo Reach, I kind of felt like I needed to sprint. Like, if I didn't sprint, then I was going to die, is what it felt like in those games. But in Halo Infinite, that doesn't seem to be the case. And I think that's a really welcome feeling, especially in a modern FPS. And then another thing I wanted to talk about is the fact that aim assist seemed really toned down. And this is something that I would imagine won't be in the final release of the game. You know, because Halo has almost always typically had some sort of aim assist on console. But I genuinely think that it was interesting to play a Halo game with what felt like absolutely zero aim assist. And honestly, it kind of made me come to the sobering realization that I am really garbage with the sniper rifle. But the best way that I can explain the feeling of no aim assist would be that it kind of feels how Splitgate feels on console. Because I don't think that game has aim assist either. And I don't really think that's a bad thing either. I kind of hope that when the game launches, it gives us an option to adjust aim assist, like maybe lower it or turn it off completely. Either way, it didn't give me any major problems in the technical preview. And up next, I want to talk about weapons, because some of these weapons are absolutely therapeutic. Like the AR feels incredible to me for the first time in a Halo game since, maybe Halo CE. Because in previous games, the AR just kind of felt like an afterthought. It felt like it was there, just to be another weapon in the sandbox. Like a good example would be that in a game of Auto Slayer on Halo 3, what I normally do is I just switch immediately to the Magnum. Like I don't even really use the AR. And the same can be said for the AR in Halo 5, because I think the AR in Halo 5 just might as well not even existed, because the Magnum that they had right next to it was just infinitely better, infinitely more precise, felt like it was infinitely more powerful. So the AR in Halo 5 just kind of felt useless, whereas in Halo Infinite, it feels like they give you a reason to use that AR. Like I don't feel, especially at mid-range, like at medium range, I don't feel like I'm guaranteed to be outgunned by somebody with a BR if I got an AR. I feel like I've got a fighting chance against that person. Like I'm gonna have to find a few clips specifically to put in this video, but I've got a few clips that are just like pure headshots with the AR. Whereas in previous games, I feel like the AR was more of a body shot weapon. So I'm really happy to see what they've done with the AR, because like in Halo 3 through 5 and Halo 2 Anniversary, I didn't want to use the AR. And then up next, I want to talk about the BULLDOG shotgun, because this weapon feels incredible. I think one common thing among the Halo community leading up to this flight was the worry about the removal of the classic shotgun in favor of the new BULLDOG shotgun. And I can without a doubt say that I am no longer worried about this, even remotely. They absolutely nailed this weapon. It's got a perfect magazine size. I think the fire rate is also really nice for a shotgun, and it feels like it can be relatively useful outside of, 5 feet, which didn't always seem to be the case with previous Halo shotguns. And then there's the VK-78 Commando, and this thing might just be my favorite new weapon. I mean, it feels incredible, and it's due to a mix of a few different things, one of which is the sound design, which I will be talking about later in this video, but the other is how weighty it feels in comparison to the BR or the AR. I think 343 did a wonderful job making each of those three weapons feel distinct to use. You can tell that when you're letting off shots with the Commando, it's doing damage. Like, you can tell that, and that's nice. And then they got the BR, and the BR is back, and I think, it might be sacrilege to say, I think it's better than ever. And I really mean that. I mean, the BR has never felt as good as it feels in Halo Infinite. And for me personally, I always thought that the Halo 2 BR would never be able to be topped. But somehow, someway, 343 managed to top the Halo 2 BR. And not even in terms of just its feel, which I can't overstate is absolutely incredible. But they nailed the aesthetic of it as well. I mean, when you pick up that BR, it's like a wave of Halo 2 nostalgia hitting you all at once. It's got the classic BR look that everyone loves, and it's so nice to see that after the previous iterations of the BR by 343. Up next is the Sidekick, and I love this Sidekick because it's back to feeling like a secondary weapon. I think in both Halo 4 and 5, you could sort of get away with using the pistol as a primary weapon if you wanted to. Hell, I'd use the Magnum in Halo 3 as a primary weapon, depending on the size of the map we're playing on. And then of course there's the Magnum in Halo CE, which is basically just a golden gun. But in Halo Infinite, it's back to being a sidekick. It is the secondary weapon. I mean, I guess technically you could still use it as a primary in Halo Infinite, but it really gives me Halo 2 Magnum vibes. Like, it's a good option to finish off an enemy with a few quick headshots or something like that, but it's definitely not something you'd go to if you've already got a BR or a Commando or even an AR. And I think the final weapon that impressed me most was the Gravity Hammer. I have to admit, I was a little concerned when I saw the multiplayer reveal and the Grav Hammer had a wind up before you killed someone, because I really thought that would just slow things down, but it really doesn't slow things down as much as you would think it does, and it makes the weapon feel much more like a Gravity Hammer. I mean, it's a monstrous weapon, and now it feels like a monstrous weapon because of the wind-up before the hit. The only real negative I have about the Gravity Hammer is that for all the physics-driven stuff present in this game, the Gravity Hammer has almost none. I don't know if it's just a bug in the tech preview or if it's part of the full release, but when you hit somebody with a Gravity Hammer, they should go flying across the map, but that just doesn't seem to happen on this game. Which is weird considering a normal melee with any other weapon sends the enemy ragdolling across the map, which is absolutely hilarious, and I sincerely hope they don't patch that out. And then I want to talk a little bit about sound design.
Nearing victory. Double kill.
Power item inbound.
Triple kill.
Because weapons sound more visceral than they ever have in a Halo game. I genuinely think that Halo Infinite could have some of the best sound design I've heard in the entire FPS genre. We talked briefly about the Commando, but just listen to how this thing sounds in action. And this is what I'm talking about when I talk about how guns sound visceral in this game, and this is a problem I feel a lot of Halo games have had. And I guess, to be completely fair, it was never really a problem, per se. I mean, Halo has never been about its visceral weapon sounds. However, Halo has always done a good job at creating distinct sounds for weapons. Think about an AR in Halo CE. When you hear that noise, you know for a fact that it's an AR. Or the SMG or the BR in Halo 2. You can tell that someone is using those weapons just by listening to the sound of the gunfire. I mean, even the BR in Halo 4 was pretty recognizable by its sound. But while Halo has always offered a distinct sound, I don't think they've ever strived for this realistic and beefy depiction of weapon sounds until Halo Infinite. And make no mistake, the weapons still sound distinct. I mean, at least to me they do. You can tell when someone has a Commando because you can hear that thing going off. Obviously, same with the sniper rifle, same with the Needler. Your plasma pistol's pretty distinct as well. All around, I think that this game does so many things great, but I think the sound design is just next level, top tier sound design. And then finally, I want to talk about some physics, because Halo has always been a game that has really good physics. And specifically, I'm talking about the ragdoll physics in Halo Infinite. I think the best and most obvious example would be when you melee someone and they go flying across the map at literal Mach speed. Now, this is something that I'm sure is technically considered broken, but please, for the love of God, 343, do not patch that out. It never doesn't make me laugh when I melee a Spartan into orbit. I mean, I even remember the multiplayer reveal when people were getting headshotted, their entire upper torso snapped back, and I thought it was absolutely hilarious. And that's actually still present in the game. And I think the final point on physics is something that I wasn't able to capture, but I saw a video of where the guy basically recreated the energy stored ninja scene from the trailer with the gravity hammer on recharge. And stuff like this is really cool to see because there's not a lot of games that do wacky physics the way that Halo does, and I'm glad that they're still continuing to do that. But even with all this positive stuff I have to say about the tech preview, I do still have some negative things I think I should talk about. And number one is bots. Now, the bots were actually really impressive. I went into this preview thinking that the bots would be just, pushovers, to be honest with you. But they really aren't. I mean, it's impressive what 343 has done with their bot system. But I think one negative, if I gotta be nitpicky, is that once you get used to the bots, you can kind of predict what they're gonna do. And this is especially apparent at the beginning of games. For example, on live fire, you know 110% that if you spawn and run left at the start of the match for that BR or the Commando, you will be bombarded by grenades from the bots. Or if you make a beeline for mid on Bazaar, you'll run into the entire team of bots and you'll probably get gunned down or grenaded to death. And again, this is something that's only really apparent to start the matches, so I'm not too upset by it because as the match goes on, it does get less and less predictable. And what I want to talk about next is that some of these weapons I feel like could use some tweaks. For example, I feel like the heat wave should be much more powerful than it is, especially considering it swaps spawns regularly with the new BULLDOG shotgun. And when I say it should be more powerful, what I'm saying is the problem with the heat wave is that sometimes it feels really OP, and then there's times where I'm shooting someone and it feels like it's doing absolutely nothing. I also don't feel like I understand its fit in the sandbox, and maybe that's on me, but like, is it simply a Covenant shotgun? And if so, then how does it have so much range? But the thing is, even with the problems I had with the heat wave, I never missed a chance to pick it up. Like, if the heat wave was there, I was going to pick it up 110%. Because it really is a fun weapon to use. Like, the way you can bounce your shots off of things and get them around corners and get really creative with how you use it, it's really awesome, and I love the idea of it. I just feel like it needs a bit more balancing maybe. And then one other weapon that I had a problem with in this tech preview is the pulse rifle. Now, this is one that kind of upsets me, because I've always said my favorite weapon in any Halo game is the Halo 2 Covenant Carbine. Or any Covenant Carbine. I mean, Halo 2's is the holy grail for me, but any Covenant Carbine is my favorite weapon in any Halo game. And as of right now, there's been no indication that the Covenant Carbine will be in Halo Infinite, and in fact, it's looking a lot like this pulse rifle is the Covenant Carbine's replacement. But this weapon just absolutely confuses me. Like, much like the heat wave, I feel like sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. But unlike the heat wave, I'm not having any fun using the pulse rifle when it's not working. Like, the pulse rifle is a plasma-based weapon that tracks enemies. But sometimes it feels like the tracking is just busted. And hey, maybe it's not busted. Maybe I just suck with the pulse rifle. And if that's the case, then, you know, that's okay. But it is the one weapon in the game where, when I first started playing the tech preview, I was really excited to pick that weapon up. But when I got to like Saturday and Sunday of the tech preview, I just stopped picking that weapon up altogether. And then the final thing I had a problem with in the tech preview was the leveling system seemed kind of odd. Like, it was confirmed during the tech preview that you can only level up by completing challenges, which means that if you finish your weekly and daily challenges, then you're done leveling up for the next 24 hours. And I'm not a fan of this. I really wish they would have done it how MCC does it. Like, I want to be able to earn XP just by playing the game. Especially for me, when I sit down to play Halo at night, I've got everything I needed to do for the day done already, and I've got all the time in the world. So I'll end up playing for hours and hours, which means that I'll finish challenges quicker than most people might, and then I'll keep playing and eventually realize, oh, I'm not even getting XP for what I'm doing right now. And of course, I don't know what goes into making a game or making these decisions. I would assume that 343 had a very logical reason to come to the conclusion to make leveling like this. It's just, for me personally, I'm not in love with the leveling system. But overall, I am absolutely blown away by Halo Infinite. If you followed my channel for a while now, then you may have already seen my videos on Halo and know that I care a lot about this franchise. And you know that my hype level for Halo Infinite has been really high, but even with my hype level being really high, I tried to come into this tech preview being cautiously optimistic. Because everything 343 showed us from the game up to this point has been exactly what I wanted to see. And I was kind of starting to think that it might be too good to be true. But after getting my hands on this multiplayer, I can say without a doubt that it not only lived up to the hype I created in my own head, but it far exceeded that hype. This is hands down the most fun I have had playing a Halo game since 2007. And I cannot wait until it's in everybody's hands and I can sit down and play multiplayer with my old friends from school or old friends from the 360 days. Like, if what we played this past weekend is any indicator of what we'll be getting from this game, then I think 343 has a legitimate hit on their hands. You all know that Halo 4 is my favorite Halo by 343, and it's got my favorite campaign of any Halo game. But if they can deliver a campaign that is on par with that, which I have no doubt that they can, and the multiplayer is as fun as what I just played this past weekend, then this could very well be my favorite Halo of all time. And it feels absolutely amazing to be able to say that about a Halo game that we're all looking forward to. But that's really all I gotta say for this video. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Did you get a chance to play the technical preview? And if so, what were your thoughts? Let me know in the comments below. Leave a like if you liked the video, and please remember to hit that subscribe button, ring the bell, and share this video with a Halo fan in your life, because that would really mean the world to me. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.